He's one of the most solid dudes in the DC universe. It's time to talk about Jon Stewart, the Green Lantern, because your geek history lesson is now in session. Hello and welcome to Geek History Lesson. I am Jason Emerald Inman.
I am Ashley Victoria Robinson. Welcome to your Mind University, because you have stumbled onto the podcast where we take one character, team, or hard-light construct from popular culture and teach you everything you need to know about them in about an hour. That was really hard for me to say.
Sounds like Ashley has forgotten what this podcast is.
Oop, boy.
We just started.
And this week we are talking about a great Green Lantern character. Who's that, Jason?
We're talking about Jon Stewart, Green Lantern, or 2814.2, actually.
In my opinion, probably the most well-known Green Lantern.
Well, that is an argument to be had. I don't know if that argument will happen in this episode or not. Probably not. So this episode was suggested by a couple of people, specifically Patrick McMillan and Ethan Isaiah Mackey. So thank you to both of you gentlemen for suggesting the Jon Stewart Green Lantern episode. Ashley, if they want to suggest future episodes, where can they go?
If you want to be as awesome as our TAs and request future episodes, you can go to geekhistorylesson.com, facebook.com/geekhistorylesson, or on Twitter at GHL Podcast. There's a whole bunch of ways to contact us in all those places.
And we're going to go right into the first section of our podcast, the 10-cent origin. Ashley, what is the 10-cent origin?
Well, that is all of the basics, who's its and what's its and creators, in case you go to a 2814 themed cocktail party and someone doesn't know who Jon Stewart is.
Jon Stewart is also known as Green Lantern, the Master Builder, or Dark Star. He was created by Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams, and his first appearance was in Green Lantern number 87 in December of 1971. His team affiliations are the Green Lantern Corps, the Justice League, the Guardians of the Universe, the Dark Stars, the U.S. Marine Corps, the Indigo Tri, and the Ultraviolet Marine Corps. His abilities, of course, all come from his Green Lantern Power Ring, which include abilities like flight, force field, space travel again, space travel in warp speeds, hard light constructs, or translation of all languages. I just wanted to make sure you knew that he travels in space a lot. And of course, he was portrayed on the Justice League, the animated series, by Phil Lamar. Now, before we get into the main lesson here for Jon Stewart, I just want to say that Jon Stewart's kind of a special character to me because some university students might know that I wrote a book called Super Soldiers, A Salute to the Comic Book Heroes and Villains That Served Our Country. Now, this details my military career in relationship to comic book superheroes that also served, and I have a Jon Stewart chapter in my book, and I thought if it was okay, I could read a little excerpt from my book right now from the Jon Stewart chapter.
I think you should. It's one of my favorite chapters in the book.
Okay, so here we go. But who is Jon Stewart? How would you describe him? He's more than simply Hal Jordan's partner. He's more than a cartoon character, He's a Green Lantern of change. I'm not just referring to his skin color either. Sure, he's the first Green Lantern main character who is African American, but Jon Stewart is not simply a character defined by his ethnicity. He's defined by change. When he was first introduced in comics, Jon was an architect. His occupation was later changed to Marine. With the retcon in place, Jon went from one military organization to another, trading the Marine Corps for the intergalactic policing of the Green Lantern Corps. He later went from sidekick to leader. During his first adventure, Jon is Hal Jordan, the main Green Lantern's sidekick, basically a trainee. Eventually, Jon Stewart ascends the ranks and leads the Green Lantern Corps and its thousands of members from across the galaxy. Could this be attributed to a military attitude from his time in the Marines? Switching from base to base and mission to mission is common for anyone in the armed forces. Are service members like Jon at ease with that? I doubt it, especially since Jon's military service was a change to his already established character history. Jon went from authority-questioning architect to order-following, rule-abiding Green Lantern pretty quickly. When he was introduced, he yelled at Hal Jordan constantly. When he was transformed into a Marine, he yelled orders at Hal instead. In many ways, this shift turned his entire character into the stereotype of a good soldier. I mean, no offense with that statement to any of the Marines listening. A character steeped in the rules and methods of a service member. It's now Jon Stewart's most defining trait. Now, I have more to say about Jon Stewart, but you can read it all in my book, Super Soldiers, A Salute to the Comic Book Heroes and Villains That Served. It's available on Amazon, or you can get signed copies personally from me at jasoninman.com/store.
I also think you just proved your bona fides in case anyone was wondering why you're teaching this lesson.
Why is that?
Well, because you're obviously an authority on Jon Stewart. You have a lot to say about him. That's very thoughtful.
I like old Johnny, so let's move straight into the old meet cute of old Johnny.
Which is where we stole a term for romantic comedy writing, and we are going to tell you where we first met this character and how cute it was. And I'm pretty sure Jason can guess mine.
Justice League, the animated series.
Yes, like many people of my generation, that was where I first met Jon Stewart. I was not much of a Green Lantern reader until I got a little older. And that's why I think he's probably the most well-known Green Lantern. Jason, where did you first meet and cute Jon Stewart?
In the 90s during Kyle Rayner's Green Lantern run. Now, during this, I knew a lot of Jon because Jon was sort of an architect to Kyle, but he was also the leader of this group called the Dark Stars. And during a certain battle in Green Lantern, specifically Green Lantern 75, Jon gets injured and he gets put in a wheelchair. And he ends up dating a cool alien babe. So this is the Jon Stewart that I knew. Mm-hmm. So that's it.
Cool. Shall we move into the History 101?
Sure.
That is the main meat of the lesson where Professor Jason is going to lay down everything we need to know about Jon Stewart.
Now, Jon, there's a little bit of publication history here. Jon was created from the need for a substitute Green Lantern in the book. Now, Neil Adams later claimed in an interview in Back Matter magazine in December of 2010 that he and Julie Schwartz, the editor at the time, had the following conversation. We ought to have a black Green Lantern, not because we're liberals, but because it just makes sense, end quotes. So, Jon Stewart is one of DC Comics' earliest black superheroes in publication history, but he's not the first.
What?
Who is the first, Ashley? We have talked about this gentleman on this podcast. Do you know who the first DC Comics superhero is? Black DC Comics superhero.
Black Lightning.
That is correct. It is not Jon Stewart like many people believe. So it's Black Lightning. Jefferson Pierce.
He's the first black Green Lantern.
Well, true. But he's also only the third Green Lantern in publication history. So,
well, I'm just saying if people want to.
So,
yes.
All right. So into the fictional history.
Yes.
According to the ancient reader in the Tower of Talo, on the day of Jon Stewart's birth, an immortal guardian of the universe prophesies that Jon would grow to become the legendary hero known as the Opener of Doors. And we might reference that later, but we'll find out.
Okay.
Jon Stewart is an architect, later retconned into a veteran U.S. Marine from Detroit, Michigan, who was selected by the Guardians as a backup Green Lantern to the then current Green Lantern, Hal Jordan.
Yeah, because there's a lot of crossover with when Green Lanterns become Green Lanterns, because Hal's kind of always around.
Yep. Now, after the previous backup, Guy Gardner was seriously injured after getting hit by a car while trying to save a civilian. Because if there's one thing we know about Guy Gardner, he gets hit by things a lot and has a lot of head injuries, and we'll learn more about him maybe in an upcoming Geek History lesson. Now, although Hal Jordan initially objected to the decision after seeing that Stewart had a belligerent attitude to authority figures, the Guardians stood by their decision and chided Jordan for his supposed bigoted outlook on the issue. Now, Jordan explained that he just felt that even though Stewart might have the integrity for the task, he obviously would have a chip on his shoulder bigger than the Rock of Gibraltar.
Okay, hyperbole much.
Yes. Now, Jon was trained in the usage of his power ring by Katmatui, the Green Lantern on the planet Koragar. Now, Ashley, what is important about the planet Koragar?
That's a really excellent question, Jason. What's important about the planet Koragar?
Do you not know?
No.
It is the home planet of Sinestro.
Oh, I did know that.
The biggest Green Lantern villain of all time.
Yep.
So the duo went on to have many adventures together and eventually fell in love. Kat Matui and Jon, that is, not Jon and Hal Jordan.
Or Sinestro.
Now, Kat and Jon went on to serve with the Green Lantern Corps on Earth, including alongside Hal Jordan, Arisa, Kilowog, Salak, and other Green Lanterns. And soon they were married eventually.
Oh.
Yes. Now, Jon Stewart went on to fill on for Hal Jordan in a lot of missions when Hal Jordan was away with the Justice League. And during the time when Hal Jordan gave up being a Green Lantern in the 1980s, the Guardians selected Jon Stewart for full-time duty, and Stewart served that role for some years. Fun fact, it was during this time that Jon was actually employed as an architect for Ferris Aircraft Company, which of course is Hal Jordan's, company that only hires him after he has a few drinks. So there you go.
Yes.
During his first few years of publication, Jon even appeared on Crisis on Infinite Earths. Of course, you want to know more about that, you should check out our Crisis Club episodes on Geek History Lesson. What are the numbers of those episodes? Well, I don't know.
282 to 287.
Ashley knows. I don't.
That's okay. That's what I'm here for.
Jon Stewart soon faced tragedy when Sinestro managed to depower his Green Lantern ring, and Kat Matui was murdered by a Star Sapphire, leading Jon to be falsely accused of killing Carol Ferris in retribution, because Carol Ferris was obviously a Star Sapphire many times over. Jon Stewart next appeared in a storyline called Cosmic Odyssey.
Great title.
Written by Jim Starlin and Mike Mignola, who is famous for drawing Hellboy and creating Hellboy, of course. Having left Earth and Hal Jordan's ear for space, during the storyline, Jon Stewart came upon the planet Xanshi and was unable to save its citizens from destruction as the planet blew up, and this decision would haunt Jon for the rest of his career because, of course, he thought that he could save Xanshi.
And you read a lot about that in your chapter, actually, and how that affects him.
Indeed, because Jon was so distraught by his failure that he actually contemplated suicide.
Which is never the answer.
Now, when Jon was able to finally forgive himself, he was featured in his first solo titled Green Lantern Mosaic.
Another great title.
This is written by Gerard Jones and drawn by Cully Hamner, who is astounding. Now, Jon grew into a stronger, more complex hero by taking on the role of caretaker of the Mosaic world, which is actually a patchwork of communities from multiple planets that have been brought to Oa by an insane guardian who had invaded Jon's mind. Now, we're going to talk about this series a little bit because this is, quite honestly, one of the greatest Green Lantern books of all time. We're not going to talk about the writer a lot because you can go Google.
And you'll see why.
And we're just not going to mention him anymore.
But it's an important Jon story, so we're going to
Ashley, have you heard about this book? What do you know about Green Lantern Mosaic?
I know Mosaic is not collected.
No, it's not! And that makes me so bad.
So for a long time, children,
Sorry for yelling in the mic.
Before trade paperbacks, you blew out everyone's ear. Before trade paperbacks were commonplace, trade paperbacks were rare. And so if you're as old as Jason and I, there were certain runs that were not collected.
Well, they didn't collect everything in runs like they do now.
Exactly. But there were certain runs that people sort of lauded or really recommended checking out. And Mosaic was always one that I had heard about that you had to go hunting in quarter bins for.
19 issues.
Yep. Now you can find it digitally.
Can you?
Well,
Let's hope.
Can find it.
Let's hope.
But it's a really great story. In my opinion.
Have you read it?
I have.
Have you read all of it?
I have. In my opinion,
I didn't know that.
It's quite dated now, as one might expect for something written decades ago. But this exemplifies the type of stories that Green Lantern can do that no one else. This is why Green Lantern can be special. I think it's a great example of that. So tell me about Mosaic.
Well, I'm not going to give you everything about Mosaic because I do think that people should hunt it down and read it. But I'm going to give you enough to hopefully whet your appetite.
Okie dokie.
This book is Deep Space Nine Green Lantern, if you understand that reference. I remember reading this back in the day in the $10 comic packages I would find in Walmart, and it blew my mind. So let me tell you about the Mosaic world.
Please.
It is a patchwork world of different aliens being put together. They are initially distrustful of each other, and the various communities sometimes come to battle, even leading to fatalities. Now, some of the cities had life forms hostile to each other. Others had life that liked each other. Stewart deals with the less fatal problems as overpopulation and the fact that some of the cities are only inhabited by 2 people, and assisting Stewart in his efforts of are the citizens of the Evergreen City, including several youngsters whose parents are suffering severe mental problems due to their unique situation. Now, Jon gives these children less powerful Green Lantern rings, and they help assist them in future conflicts. Now, he tries to build roads between the cities, and that is a big thing because he's an architect. And he also views him taking care of Mosaic World as a penance for the destruction of Xanshi, which he blames himself for. He tries to make the Mosaic World the best it could be. Then at the end of the series, Jon eats his Green Lantern ring and becomes the first mortal guardian of the universe. He gets his wife Katma Tui back, and the series ends with him playing piano in a very surrealistic way because Green Lantern Mosaic, was canceled at 18 issues, not 19. And most of his ending was actually ignored by future Green Lantern comics. However, in an unusual move, and although the sales of the book were very strong, Green Lantern Mosaic was canceled at issue 18, and Cully Hamner later said in an interview, and I quote, "As I was told at the time, Green Lantern Mosaic didn't fit with the DC editorial vision, whatever that means. Sales also didn't matter. Fan support didn't matter. The first issue sold about 100,000 copies, and my last issue sold about 70,000. So there were plenty of support for the book. It was marked for cancellation when issue 5 came out, and they allowed Jerry Jones a year to wrap it up. But there was no doubt that it was being canceled because somebody upstairs just didn't care for it. So I had a feeling after a while of creatively being against the wall, it got it out before the end." So he's like, you pay your money, you take your chances. That's the comic biz.
And he's absolutely true, ultimately. It
actually says in the letter column of the final issue of Green Lantern Mosaic, because I've read it, that the writer, who I will not name, says that he had planned it being 25 issues. So he had to wrap everything early.
Pretty close, though. It's not bad. We've seen great stories cut off far sooner than that. As well. Can I interject with a really quick action figure spotlight?
For Green Lantern Mosaic?
Yeah.
Okay.
There is a DC Universe Classics Katma Tui figure where she has her little feathered haircut.
Okay.
It looks great.
That's cool. I didn't know there was a Katma Tui.
Yeah.
Share it online, please.
I certainly will.
Soon after Mosaic, tragedy struck.
Oh, no.
And Hal Jordan became possessed by Parallax.
That is a tragedy.
And he destroyed both the Guardians and the Central Power Battery. So, how does this affect Jon? Well, he had finally fixed Mosaic World, right? And it all fell apart when Hal Jordan destroyed the Green Lantern Corps at the Nudging Parallax. Jon was rendered powerless because he lost his Green Lantern ring.
Hal literally ruins everything.
Yep. He became human again, and Katma Tui died.
No.
Yep. Later, it was revealed that most of the Mosaic World was evacuated by a multi-species coalition in anticipation of the battle, and the survivors of the experiments were actually taken back to their original homeworlds. So Mosaic World is not another Xanshi.
Good.
Just to understand. Good. Xanshi's the big disaster.
Yeah.
Although if I was writing Jon Stewart, I would have him talk about Mosaic all the time. So, having lost everything, Jon is recruited by the controllers to join and lead the Dark Stars, which is a kind of a low-rent Green Lantern Corps, which is needed now more than ever now that all the Green Lantern Corps is gone. To increase his ranks, Jon sought out many veteran Green Lanterns to become Dark Stars. He also met his new love and fellow Dark Star, Marin Dathalis, and in a battle with Graven, who is an illegitimate son of Darkseid, Jon suffered severe injuries that left him crippled, and he lost the ability to walk. He soon left the Dark Stars and returned to Earth with Marin. Now, this happens in Kyle Rayner Green Lantern number 75, which is one of my favorite single issues of all time, so I highly, highly suggest reading it. Now, during the events of Final Night, when the sun went out, Hal visited Jon and used his near limitless power to grant him the ability to walk again. This also resulted in Jon having the power to unleash blasts of green energy for a time. However, all this faded, and Jon found himself unable to walk again. Now, when Kyle Rayner first absorbed the power of Ion, he was able to diagnose Jon Stewart's condition. What's Ion, Ashley?
Ion is all the power of light in the universe.
It's the power of will. It's the spirit. Like Parallax is a spirit representation of fear. Ion is the spiritual representation of will.
Kyle's been so many things.
So apparently there was an energy blockage left over from what Hal did during the Final Night that was preventing Jon from walking again. So Kyle removed it. However, Jon found that he could still not walk. It was then that Jon's psychologist helped him realize why. And for a long time, he had been repressing the memories of the car accident during his childhood that killed his sister, and subconsciously he was punishing himself. Once Jon realized this and accepted the truth, he was able to walk again because he was no longer punishing himself for the loss of his sister.
That's kind of cool.
I don't like that.
I like that they didn't physically disable him, even though there's tons of incredible disabled people and there's incredible disabled characters. We scream that about Oracle all the time. But it feels like a really mean thing to do to this incredibly important character, to be like, you just can't walk. By making it psychosomatic, you are able to give him his powers back, and I respect that.
Sure. Now, after Terry Berg, who was Kyle Rayner's art assistant, was brutally beaten for being homosexual, Kyle lost the will to stay on Earth. And he needed to get away from Earth for a while. And he left Jon Stewart a letter explaining this. With the letter, he also left a duplicate of his power ring. And Kyle had trusted Jon to protect things while he was gone. And Jon was glad to have the opportunity because it had been years since he had taken to the skies as a Green Lantern, and he would later rejoin the Justice League of America. Unfortunately, after this, Jon only pops up here and there, and he never really gets his own series like we saw with Mosaic. He just gets a series of standard Green Lantern adventures. We're going to go through that, but we're going to these aren't really Jon stories from here on out. They're all Green Lantern stories
that Jon appears in.
Yes.
Which is a bummer.
Now, Jon faces some pretty heavy consequences during the Sinestro Corps War. After Bedovian, a Sinestro Corps member, takes out several Green Lanterns, Jon Stewart uses his power ring as a scoped sniper rifle to track the nearby sectors. He eventually discovers Bedovian's hiding spot and shoots him, killing him, as a Green Lantern Corps members were all given the ability to kill Sinestro Corps members. But don't worry too much. Bedovian is resurrected in Blackest Night. And if you know anything about over Patreon, we know everything about Blackest Night Club.
Diving right in.
Go check that out.
Tons of lanterns.
Patreon.com/Jawiin. Now, that is also the issue where it is first referenced that Jon Stewart is a Marine Corps member, which was the thing that was a retcon from the Justice League cartoon. I'm going to talk about it a little bit right now. Jon Stewart was later approached by the Guardians to become one of the Alpha Lanterns, which is a new division of Corps devoted to the internal affairs of the Corps. Stewart, desiring more information about the secrecy of the forbidden prophecies, declined the offer, to the extreme disappointment of the Guardians. Now, as I said, a lot of the stories during this time were showing that Jon was a Marine. This was a retcon from an episode of the Justice League cartoon where Jon meets Metamorpho, and they call each other Jarheads, and that's like the first place that Jon was ever referenced to be a Marine. If you look at Jon Stewart's design in the Justice League cartoon,
I was just thinking that
he has the Jarhead haircut. So at this time is when it was started to show up in the comic books. So during a storyline called Green Lantern Secret Origin, where we retconned Hal Jordan's origin, they say that he was in the Air Force, and he meets a young Jon Stewart in a bar who is a Marine.
Cute.
So, back to the comic books. During the Rage of the Red Lantern story arc, Jon Stewart is one of the guards assigned to escort Sinestro to Koragar, his home planet, to face execution. However, the Green Lanterns are ambushed by the Sinestro Corps and the Red Lantern Corps under the charge of Atrocitus, but they are saved by Saint Walker of the Blue Lantern Corps. Jon, however, is infected with the Red Lantern's rage, and Saint Walker, the Blue Lantern, has to conjure up a blue energy construct of his dead wife, Katma Tui, who heals Jon and calms him down by showing him a vision of him flying in the past with Katma Tui. In the same issue, Fatality is converted into a star sapphire and orders her ring to locate Jon Stewart. Now, you may be asking, like, why does that matter? Well, Fatality is a survivor of Xanshi.
Hey, that planet that Jon didn't help save. Or he did and it didn't work.
When she tracks down Jon, she tells him that she forgives him and kisses him. Before departing, she encourages Jon to forgive himself for what happened to Xanshi. Now, she's a star sapphire, Ashley. Why is that a big deal?
Well, Star Sapphires, I think most people probably know them as being the Corps that Carol Ferris is sometimes a part of, but they worship and are powered by love.
That's correct. So that when she says the forgive himself and love himself, that kind of makes sense.
Love doesn't always mean romantic love, and that's a powerful idea.
And then we get to Blackest Night.
Bra, bra, bra.
Blackest Night, of course, we're going to talk about that over at Blackest Night Club or at patreon.com/Jawiin. Yeah, it's a Green Lantern episode. I'm going to say it a lot. Get ready to it. Get used to it.
Well, there's lanterns all over the place. Every lantern.
Buckle up. Jon actually takes a leave of absence from Earth to go back to Xanshi and to an attempt to help to rebuild the world. So when Jon visits the grave of the planet Xanshi, thousands of black rings fly into the planetary debris and reconstitute the entire planet.
Ooh.
Xanshi itself then speaks to Jon, telling him, I can help you save them. When he goes down to the reconstituted planet surface of Xanshi, he finds himself confronted by Katmatui, and the entire population of Xanshi are now black zombie lanterns. Ugh. And while battling them all, Katmatui tries to weaken Jon by claiming that he caused Xanshi's destruction. False. However, Jon, spurred by Fatality's words, believes finally that he was not the cause of it and successfully fights off all the Black Lanterns. Nice. Now, after the Blackest Night, we're going to skip ahead again to the War of the Green Lanterns. Krona, the guy who is very integral to Crisis on Infinite Earths and one of the original Guardians of the Universe, who actually created the Green Lantern rings, he controls or gets control of all the emotional entities of the different colored Corps. Now, that includes Ion. That includes Parallax and a bunch of the other ones who I don't remember the names.
Basically everyone.
That's what I said. He controls all the emotional allies.
Yeah.
The entities. He doesn't control the cores. He controls the entities, the spirits.
Oh, okay. Thank you for clear. I was like, that's just a bunch of people.
No, he controls the spirits.
Cool.
Okay. So he defeats the Guardians of the Universe with that power, and he installs Parallax back into the central power battery of the Green Lantern Corps. Now, Ashley, Parallax was in the Green Lantern power battery for a long time before it took control of Hal Jordan.
Yes.
How did that affect the Green Lanterns? What did Parallax do back in the day that modern Green Lanterns don't have anymore? Like, what is the thing that Parallax affected that modern Green Lanterns don't have a problem with anymore?
Didn't it make them susceptible to yellow?
That is correct, because Parallax is yellow.
Whew.
So he puts Parallax back into the central power battery.
Bad news bears.
Which also gives them the weakness to yellow again, but also allows Parallax to take control of the vast majority of the Green Lantern Corps to infect them with fear.
Boo.
In order to have the power to fight, Hal Jordan proposes that the Earth Lanterns all take off their power rings and use power rings that he has collected from the other colored Lantern Corps. So he gives Jon Stewart the Indigo Power Ring, and Jon becomes an Indigo Lantern. What are the Indigo Lanterns, Ashley?
They are the Lantern Corps that is powered by empathy?
Yes, compassion.
Compassion, sorry.
Yeah.
Same thing.
Now, the 4 Earth Lanterns, Hal Jordan, Jon Stewart, Guy Gardner, and Kyle Rayner, by the way, do you want to take guesses on what they all picked as their colors?
Ooh, they picked them?
You know Jon is indigo.
Mm-hmm. Kyle, is this when Kyle becomes a White Lantern?
No.
Kyle is blue.
Kyle's a Blue Lantern.
Guy is orange.
Guy's red.
I knew it was orange or red.
It's always red. So what color does Pal pick?
Green.
He can't use green.
Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet.
No, yellow. Because he's been a Sinestro Corps member before.
Oh, I would have thought.
And because he has Parallax, so he can control Parallax.
Okay.
Fine. Their plan to stop the War of the Green Lanterns was to free Mogo. Now, Ashley, who's Mogo?
Mogo is the sentient Green Lantern planet.
Yes.
Who's super cool.
Yes, indeed.
I like Mogo.
And at this time, Mogo is sort of the homeworld of the Green Lanterns.
Yeah.
But now he's being controlled by Parallax, so he's kind of
right,
evilly.
because of the power battery.
So on the way, Jon attempts to stop the flow of tainted rings sent out by Mogo, because Mogo is the one who sends and controls the Green Lantern rings.
Mogo's possessed, so Mogo don't know any better.
Well, Mogo's sending them to evil people.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ooh.
As Jon and Kyle head for Mogo's core, they discover residual Black Lantern energy in Mogo's core. Now, because sentient beings were dying and Kronos forces were growing these tainted Green Lanterns with every second, Jon made a difficult decision. He harnessed the power of a Black Lantern and he killed Mogo.
Whoa.
Now, Kyle is horrified by Jon's actions and attempts to gather pieces of Mogo back together to restart the core of Mogo and bring him back to life. But I kind of think Jon Stewart made the soldiers' decision, and kind of the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few.
Well, it's kind of also like the idea of like putting down a sick animal.
Yeah, compassion, right?
Yes.
So
in its hardest form. Also, a genius move for Jon because it echoes Xanchi, but it's his choice instead of his failure.
That's right. Now, during the storyline, The Rise of the Third Army, Jon and Fatality, the Xanchi survivor, begin a romantic relationship.
Oh, that's cute.
While they attempt to collect all the scattered pieces of Mogo, until it's revealed that he really wasn't romancing Fatality, but he was actually romancing a Durlan clone.
Oh.
Now, Jon vows to search for the real Fatality. He locates and reunites with her on a Durlan prison planet, but Fatality attacks him, and she reveals to him that the Zamorans had influenced her into becoming a Star Sapphire, forcing her to love him when she actually hates him and still blames him for the fall of her planet.
Boo.
Then DC Rebirth happened, and Jon was put into a leadership position of the mixed Green Lantern and Sinestro Corps alliance when the two decided to unite and both exist on Oa, an alliance which he proposed, and that basically brings us into the modern day.
Yes, and we don't want to spoil anything.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to get too current because Jon isn't doing a lot.
Yeah, which is a bummer.
So, all right, that's it. That's it for the lesson. Let's go into the recommended reading.
Yes, where if you liked anything that Jason laid down here about Jon Stewart, he is going to recommend stuff that if you go to geekhistorylesson.com/recommended reading, you can click on a little widget, you can purchase it and get it shipped to your home, and a little bit of support comes back our way so that we can reconstitute the core of the Mind University. Look,
Green Lantern Mosaic has not been collected, so none of these are that. So, book 1 is War of the Green Lanterns. This is where Jon becomes an Indigo Lantern and he kills Mogo. Book 2, I'm going to recommend for Jon Stewart, is Green Lantern Corps Blackest Night.
Nice.
This is where Jon has to deal with Kat Matui. This is where Jon has to deal with Black Lantern Xanchi. And then book 3, I'm going to recommend you. It is about Jon Stewart, even though it's called Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps, Volume 1, Sinestro's Law. Now, Jon Stewart's a big part of this book, and I don't want to spoil a lot of stuff, but this is the book where Jon proposes the idea of the Sinestro Corps and the Green Lanterns teaming up, and that, instead of having 2 Green Lanterns for every sector, you have 1 Green Lantern and 1 Sinestro Corps member. I think it's an interesting idea.
I think it's an interesting way to play with the idea of, to use a Star Wars reference, bringing balance to the Force.
Yes. And now we're going to go into the discussion, and we're going to be joined by our dear, dear friend who has appeared on our Top 10 Arrow episode series, and he's appeared with Ashley to review Black Lightning Season 2. You know him as an incredible stand-up comedian, a panelist of Collider Movie Talk, the host of the Mad Titan podcast, and a leader of the Supervillains Squad. Please welcome Mr. Jay Washington. Jay Washington, welcome back to Geek History Lesson.
Thank you, man. I'm glad to be back. I'm glad you decided to hit me up. It was like, hey, you want to do this again? you actually like me. You know what I'm saying? You like me. Watch your head. Don't hit it on that light.
I know. We're recording at Jay's secret supervillains layer of Legion of Doom. But we're not here to talk about any villains, because I know that's the Mad Titan podcast. Your whole brand is about villains, but we're here to talk about a hero.
Yes.
Jon Stewart, Green Lantern. Now, I have some personal connections to Jon Stewart, Green Lantern, because, he is a service member and
Marine.
And he's a great, great Green Lantern. And he was great in the Justice League cartoon. What is your connection to Jon Stewart? How much do you love him? Let's hear some of your Jon Stewart bona fides.
Well, again, you have a character growing up when you hear superhero characters. I will always say this: growing up, you didn't hear of that many African American characters, and that many African American characters in a forefront leadership role. So then, time goes around, and then you still get into comic books and whatever, and then you hear about a black Green Lantern, and you're like, what? Okay, let's see. And so you read his story and you start reading and you're like, wait, this dude is not just a sidekick. He's not an offshoot. He's at the forefront.
He's a leader.
He's a leader. You know, a lot of people have that title of he's a leader, but he's a leader. And so to see that has been like so dope, and to watch the evolution and the different adventures he's had and what they've had him do and how he's never played a back seat to any of the other Lanterns.
Now, let me ask you this question, because it's a big thing that we talk about in this episode. The fact that Jon's Marine background is a retcon. When Jon Stewart was originally introduced in the comic books, he was an architect.
He was an architect, yeah.
And it didn't come until the actual Justice League cartoon. Now, let me ask you, when you encountered Jon Stewart for the first time, was he always a Marine?
It was the Marine. Jon
Okay,
Stewart.
was it the cartoon?
Yeah, it was the cartoon. That was my introduction to the
Yeah.
cartoon, yeah. So, because again, some comic books you stop reading and then you see cartoons. The Justice League cartoon was like, wait, what?
Justice League cartoon was great.
Yeah, because it was something you had to see.
Yeah.
And so that was the introduction. He's a Marine, you know. And sometimes I know people be like, oh, well, they had to make him a soldier or stuff like that. But there's a reason for this. There's a reason for the retcon. There's a reason you went back and said, we need this military leadership role, because it's going to play out heavily throughout his arc.
Let me talk about this. So it's funny. We talk about this a little bit in the episode, but I talk about this a lot in my book, Super Soldiers. You can get it at jasonedmond.com. Plug. Anyways, in the Jon Stewart chapter, I break down that I think the reason why they made him a Marine is that if you look at everybody else in that team, including Superman and Batman, none of them are the clear leader. They're actually, when you break them down, vigilantes to their core are rebels.
Yeah.
And making Jon Stewart the Marine makes him the leader of that team, because he's the one that knows about teamwork. He's the one that knows about planning. He's the one that can tell them all what to do, and they might listen to him.
And it gives them organization.
Yes.
Like they're together collectively as the Justice League, but like you just said, at any moment they can split off and say, we don't.
Because they all secretly hate Batman. They're not going to listen to Batman.
They're not going to listen. You're not going to listen to that
Batman's
dude.
a dick.
He's a dick. Look, you billionaire bitch. Like nobody's going to listen to him. But that's the thing. Like, so when you have Jon Stewart, you have a dude who can rally the troops.
Yeah.
You know, figuratively speaking and realistically, he can rally the troops. And so to do that is a smart move. And granted, you're always going to have that pushback.
Yeah.
You're like, how is he the leader? But then when you look at it, he's one of the most powerful Green Lanterns. He has unbreakable will. Like, he can't be tested. And that, again, goes back to the retconning with his military.
Yes.
So it's like, you got to look at all the positives they've made with this character and why they do it.
Why do you think... so when they made him a Marine in the comic books, they brought in some of his architectural background, and they say the idea that Jon's constructs, his Green Lantern constructs, are more detailed
Because of the architect background.
than everybody else.
Yep.
Do you like that? Do you think that's a good character trait? Yeah.
Because again, we know the power of the Green Lantern is the power of will. So whatever you will yourself to have, you can just make anything. Granted, I hate going to the Green Lantern movie. We saw some of the wacky things Hal Jordan would do. But again, go into the comic books. Wacky things Hal Jordan would do. Reckless things Guy Gardner would do. You know, and Kyle Rayner's just there.
Well, hey, that's my favorite Green Lantern. No, Kyle Rayner, actually, it's funny, in the comic books, he's sort of the one that is the anime Green Lantern. Like, he makes giant mech robots and monsters and stuff, you know?
So you have that, but then you have somebody who everything he builds out of his mind, he sees it and it's structurally sound. So it will work. That's the architect in him, but also that's that leader.
Yeah.
I need to make sure this works to this specificity. This gives me the exact thing we needed to do. And I think that's so dope with that. Also, Jon Stewart brought together the green and yellow lanterns.
That is true. Okay, so that is a great point. There's a very recent addition, and that's actually a great... Actually, to be honest with you, I really liked that. I thought it was a great idea.
Because you take sworn enemies, in a sense, and now make them work together for a common cause. And it's like, okay, no one else could do this? Even the Guardians, in a sense, couldn't make this happen?
Not even Hal Jordan.
Not even Hal Jordan, but Jon Stewart can do this. And so that speaks volume about it. Also, he was the first man to be Star Sapphire. Like, come on now.
That's right.
He's
That's
the first man to be a Star
correct.
Sapphire. So it's like, there's so many things that are, for lack of better words, historic with him that you don't hear with other characters. And that speaks volumes to the belief of the character, the backstory, and where you, like I said before, that arc where you want it to go.
Now, at the time of this recording, we are in a sort of post DC Rebirth world, and there's like 2 Green Lantern titles being published. It's The Green Lantern that stars Hal Jordan, and it's Far Sector, which is a really cool book. Everybody, if you're not reading, you should go read Far Sector. Anyways, Jon Stewart is kind of nowhere to be seen. I think he's in the Justice League. I think he's in the Justice League book. But how do you feel about that there really isn't a Green Lantern Corps book starring Jon Stewart out there right now?
I think that's very weird, for lack of better words, because again, this is a character you've put at the forefront of your Lantern. Now, you could go all different type of reasonings why they would put him on the back burner, but I think you need to have something where I don't want to play that whole just wait and see if he's available. He should have been there. Like, I know everybody will go, what about Hal Jordan? He's the main one we know of. Well, you've built this character. I think it is very discerning that he's not there. Like, you should see more Jon Stewart and things. But again, we'll talk about it, how you still have live action, you have movies, TV potentially. So, but again, in comic form, that's where he should be, because you can do so much more in comic book form than you can on the live action spectrum, I believe.
Well, let me ask you this. Jon Stewart has had his own solo title in the past. I actually had talked about it on this podcast. I loved it. There was a title in the 90s called Green Lantern Mosaic. And I think it's one of the greatest Green Lantern stories of all time. It's 20 issues, and it's Jon Stewart's tale. It's about him living on this Mosaic planet. Do you think Jon Stewart could support a solo book? No Green Lantern Corps. It's Green Lantern Jon Stewart. It's his book.
Yeah. Because I believe, again, the leadership, the military qualities he possessed, that can be applied to different missions throughout the entire DC universe. Again, without the core. You know, him having to do things on his own, him having to use his mind, using that indomitable will, that unbreakable will, him using that architect from what they've given him to be able to build and solve his way out of problems that are more complex than others, where he won't break, if you will. He's able to stay through it. I think, you could do that. I think you definitely could.
I think it could. I definitely think it could work, and I kind of think it's kind of like what I've been always proclaiming, that there should be a Lois Lane book.
Okay, we need to talk about that eventually.
There should be a Lois Lane book. There should be a Daily Planet book. There should be a Gotham Central book starring Commissioner Gordon. Anyways, the DC universe bench is so deep. Final question for you: as it stands currently in the DC comic books world, there are too many damn lanterns from Earth. There are too many damn Green Lanterns from Earth. There are, I think, at this time of this recording, 75. That's probably not right. But anyways, you only get to keep 2. I'm going to ask you, Jay, does John make those 2? And who's the other person? So you only get to keep 2 of all, and it's just that, like, there's Hal Jordan, there's Jon Stewart, there's Guy Gardner, there's Kyle Rayner, there's Simon Baz, there's Jessica Cruz, and there's now the new woman from Far Sector, who I cannot remember her name either right now, but she has the really dope Janelle Monáe Green Lantern costume.
Stewart is one of mine.
So John makes it. Okay.
John makes, because you need a leader.
Yep.
You need a leader no matter what. The question of who follows. Hal got kicked out, so that automatically, like, you've been kicked out before.
Yeah, multiple times.
Yeah, you've been kicked out.
Actually, to be honest with you, all of them have been kicked out multiple times.
This is true.
Even John.
Yeah, they'd be like, yeah, we can't. Yeah, because he did.
It's a recurring trope in their stories.
That, like, you're a Lantern, but you're not. Yeah. You can be. Who is it though for me? Is it
like, would you throw Guy Gardner in there with John, because they have shown to work in the past, but also Jon Stewart for a long time in the 90s was a supporting character of Kyle Rayner's solo run, and he was a great character in that run. So I don't know, you think Kyle gels with him better?
Again, you're a Kyle fan.
I love Kyle, man.
You're a Kyle fan.
Kyle is the torchbearer. He saved the Green Lanterns.
I want to see, if this is me, just to see what type of story you can come up with. Because Jessica Cruz was a cop, right? Or was it Simon?
I don't think either one of them were cops.
I thought it was cops.
No, I don't think either one of them were cops.
They weren't? Okay.
The new Far Sector Green Lantern is a cop.
That's what it is. I'm sorry.
Again, I didn't mean to make this the Far Sector podcast, but that book's great. That book is really good.
So you're like, Jay, who are you picking? I know some of you all listening screaming. No, I'm not picking Hal. No, okay. I'm not picking Guy.
All right, Guy's out.
Okay.
All right.
Guy's out. For me, it's between 2 right now.
All right, who are the 2?
It's between Kyle and Jessica.
Oh, interesting. Okay. I would like the better partner. Yeah.
I want to see the dichotomy. We've seen the dichotomy, like you said, with Kyle and John. I think it would be interesting to see Jessica and Jon, because
like the expert and the rookie.
Yep. To watch the two of those, the rookie who is high strung, who knows she can do this, and she's got to prove herself. Where Jon is like, you don't have to do too much. You know what I'm saying? Like, as a Marine, he's steadfast, he's focused. Like, listen, I get what you want to do, I get what you want to be, but it's like reeling them in and not having her take a back seat, but training her in a sense to be that leader he is. So I'd like to see that one.
All right. Well, I look forward to reading GLJJ Squared, coming from DC Comics, written by Jay Washington. Jay, thank you so much for joining us, Geek History Lesson.
Thank you always for having me on here.
Man, you're lovely. You're such a great guest. Where can people find you on the internet? Because I'm certain they're going to want to listen to your podcast.
I'm hoping so. You can find the Mad Titan podcast anywhere you get your podcast from. It's not just about superheroes. What it is I get you caught up on everything that's happening in the Marvel and DC live action cinematic universes. That is every TV show and movie. It's barbershop talk for nerds.
He watches too much.
Way too much. Lord have mercy. Also, Twitter and Instagram at Mr. J Washington. You can do that. So, yeah.
All right, Jay. Thanks again.
Thank you.
And I think it was an amazing discussion with Jay Washington. We always love having him on the show. So please go follow him on Twitter. And he'll stick around for the GHL Extra, which you can only hear at patreon.com/Jawiin.
Hey.
Let's go over that. Next, we're going to the teaching tweet.
Yes, we're in 140 characters or less when he remembers it. Professor Jason is going to condense everything we just talked about. You can find it on our official Twitter at GHL Podcast. And...
I'm just waiting for you to stop talking.
Oh. You were typing and I was trying to vamp. Sorry.
I'm adding to my tweet, Ashley.
Nice.
I can always rewrite.
It's true. You can literally edit it until you start saying it.
Jon Stewart, the military man who uses his will to push through the galaxy, making sure all species and every creature has the right to live their life the way they choose. A right Jon will defend till his death. Please collect Green Lantern Mosaic.
That's very nice. Well done.
Yeah, there you go. Now we're going to honor roll.
Where if you go over to Apple Podcasts and you leave us a 5-star review, we'll read whatever you write because you are doing us a solid and helping us in the algorithm. If you are an international reviewer, please take a screenshot and email it to geekhistorylesson@gmail.com. We want to include you, but we can only access the Apple Podcast in our country. Who is joining the honor roll today, Jason?
First one comes from Only Elaine, who says, Jason and Ashley are a force to be reckoned with. Geek History Lesson is amazing, and I learned so much. For a future lesson, I'm hoping we do an Adam Strange episode. Keep it up, you guys. Love this podcast.
Nice.
Next one comes from Tavares Y, who says, to anyone who's looking for a nice background on your favorite comic book hero or villain, this is an entertaining way to get a summation of their history. I love the anticipation of seeing which new character or stories they dive to in each week.
Sweet.
And then the last one comes from Male Cinderella 3, who says, found this podcast after searching for Constantine info so I can be prepared for Legends of Tomorrow Season 4. I have not found an episode that does not entertain me, so please make more. I would be extremely happy if you guys continue with the Power Rangers franchise, even if it's only once a year. P.S. I love the Doctor Strange impression, Professor Ashley. Well, Male Cinderella number 3. It loves you. So thank you so much to Only Elaine, Tavares Y, and Male Cinderella 3, and welcome into the Teacher's Lounge for joining the honor roll. There's a big pile of gold stickers in the corner left there by Mrs. Hazen.
What does Mrs. Hazen teach?
Only Little House on the Prairie literature.
Love it.
Yep. Don't forget, guys, you can listen to us on everywhere you can listen to podcasts. Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, iHeartRadio, all those places. Go check us out over there. And also, Ashley, we have social media where they can suggest stuff.
True.
Where can they do that?
You can suggest things like our fine TAs by going to geekhistorylesson.com, facebook.com/geekhistorylesson, or on Twitter at GHL Podcast.
And thanks to Patrick McMillan and Ethan Isaiah Mackey for suggesting Jon Stewart. Also, don't forget to follow us on Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at Jawiin, Jawiin. You can follow Ashley on Twitter and Instagram at Ashley V. Robinson. Hashtag stick around. What's that, Ashley?
That is where we hope you stick through our plugs, and we talk about extra stuff, and people tweet at us. Tweet hashtag stick around if you've stuck around.
We're going to be frank about this, Ashley.
Yeah.
Why haven't we seen Jon Stewart in live action yet?
Because a producer and an executive at DC Comics really likes Hal Jordan. That's why.
Do you think we should have?
Absolutely. I think the movie should have been Jon Stewart. I think more people know. I've said it like 3 times now. Because of the cartoon, most people who are not comics people, your lay people, your normies, know Jon Stewart. I remember, I think we've said this on another podcast, when the original Green Lantern movie was coming out and everyone said, I thought Green Lantern was black. And
I know. I think I was the one that gave you that idea too, where I was like, a lot of people thought it should have been Jon Stewart.
Yeah. I mean, also, and I've said this, I think, on like every Green Lantern episode, like Hal Jordan is the least interesting Green Lantern in a lot of ways. And I especially think in the current climate, with Justice League so white as it is, I think we're ripe for a Jon Stewart.
Well, movie Justice League isn't really, but we don't know if we're using any of those people.
Right. No, you're right. They actually have done a good job at bringing some actual diversity there, but those people are probably never coming back. So
that's a fair point.
I don't hate the idea of a buddy cop, but I definitely think Jon Stewart should be present. And also, Jon Stewart gives you an opportunity to cast someone who's not 25. Like, that's a character who's very, by modern standards, very serious, very stalwart. So, you could have, the obvious choice is like an Idris Elba type playing that role. Do you think he should be in live action?
Yep, I hope they go buddy cop.
Me too.
Cool. That's it. Thanks for listening to Geek History Lesson. I am Jason. Where is Mosaic Inman?
I am Ashley Victoria Robinson, and Professor Jason, would you please dismiss the class?
Class is dismissed.